like to call to order the Middleton Board Select meeting for Tuesday, July 30th, 2024. And remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded, audio and visually. And to begin, we'll start with the business at hand, which would be the reading of the warrant 2502 and FP 40, if you would, Justin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before you this evening, you have warrant 2502 dated July 25th, 2024 on the payroll side of things, totaling in at $624,704. A few high-level things that I'd like to identify. You'll see about $2,100 for Eagle monitoring. That's part of the facilities project, and something that we're required to do as we go throughout the construction period. For the bills payable side of things, totaling in at $755,094. You'll see $7,000 for the Locust Street development concept. That was for Scott Morin when he came in and did the 2 plans for us. That'll be moving forward, and I'm expecting a report from the appraiser back towards the end of August. So we have that out there and ongoing. You'll see about $16,000 for the Liberty Street water main project. That is ongoing as well. About $5,100 for a DPW printer replacement. That's the plotter printer. It's the big one, if you're wondering why it costs that much. And then additionally, you have before you facilities project warrant FP 40. It's a smaller one. They typically won't be like that, but it's $12,388. And we do have Brian LaRoche of PCA 360 with us this evening later on in the agenda to give a little bit of an update on the Middleton Municipal Campus.
Well, thank you. I'll take a motion to accept warrant 2502 with the facilities project number 4.
So moved.
Second.
All those, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. Passed unanimously. All right. And secondly, everyone's had a chance to look at the
We gotta
minutes.
do FP 40.
I think he put them both in one
Yeah.
motion.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I'm separate?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I
it's
only
motion,
heard
okay.
one.
Excuse me. Next would be, everyone's looked at the open session minutes from July 9th of 2024, as well as the executive session minutes of that same date. If anybody has any questions on those?
Move to accept as presented.
A second?
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And Justin Sulzbach, if you would, please, with the town administrator updates and reports.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a few updates across town. As a reminder, tax bills are due this upcoming Thursday, August 1st. I wanted to take a moment to congratulate Brad Swanson, our assessor, for his the award that he received through the Massachusetts Association of Assessing Officers, the MAAO.
Correct.
I'm out of practice. I used to be able to just rattle that one off. It's a tough one, though.
Lot of vowels.
Yes, for his outstanding contributions to the MAAO. He's been very involved for some time. So Brad's just another one we have in the stable among town staff that's a leader within their own specific profession, specific specialty. So good job to Brad. A Zoom meeting will be held with residents that abut the Mill Pond, start conversations for future planning and just a plan of action in general. That'll be next Tuesday. The Tuesday following that, which is your August 13th meeting, we'll have that on as an agenda item as well, just to talk about what the options are where that is a privately owned dam. The developer for Villbridge Middleton has agreed to drop the request for a drive-through for the commercial component of his project at the former Angelica site, and the ZBA will be wrapping up both the residential and the commercial components at their August 22nd meeting, barring any unforeseen circumstances. A huge thank you to the Middleton Police Benevolent Association for their sign dedication at Kuchar Way a few weeks ago. It was a very nice ceremony. Really meaningful, and for a good guy. It was, for me especially, where this happened some time ago, it was nice to hear a little bit about him, so, and the impact he had in the community. As mentioned, early engineering from Scott Morin was passed on to Minco, so we'll have something back hopefully for late August in time for your early September meeting. I've been working with Library Director Loretta Swift Johnson to engage a architect for a conditions assessment for the Flint Public Library. So as I reached out maybe a week or two ago, we were out there taking a look at the trees and how they overhang on the building and things like that. That also, I think, highlights a good example of the need for a dedicated facilities person on our staff. As much as I love helping and leading from the front, and there's nothing below my position, things like that, I think it's, time is better spent elsewhere. But either way, for now, we're making it work. So just something to keep an eye on there at the Flint. And then the building committee approved the final location for the MELV generator at their most recent meeting. It will be tucked behind the public safety facility across from the communications tower. So they did come to a consensus on that. And that is everything. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any questions for you? No? Okay.
So you
Go
said
ahead.
that it's a Zoom meeting with the people that abut,
Middleton.
so you'll reach out to all the abutters?
Correct. So a letter went in the mail to them today with a Zoom link, just letting them know if they'd like to join Paul, Kristen, and me, just to have a small level conversation just with their neighbors about how they feel about it. And then we figured we would take that input and then bring it to a larger publicly posted meeting with some public officials.
Is that just people that literally own waterfront, or did it go back a little bit into the neighborhood, that outreach?
Anybody that has a parcel that abuts the body of water.
So okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Approximately how many parcels is that?
I don't know offhand. If I were to guess, 12.
12 is that? Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, so on to the second item on the agenda was the public comment period, and we'll look to see if we have anyone remotely or present. Okay, we have someone present for the public comment. Go right ahead, Trevor.
All right, Trevor Carrier, 135 4th Street, here on behalf of the Masconomet Regional School Committee. I just wanted to come give a quick update about what we've been up to this summer, what the administration's been up to this summer, and thank town meeting and the select board because we've been able to do some work capital-wise on the campus-wide surge protection system, campus-wide wireless clock system, the Mac lab upgrade, a couple maintenance things, the convection ovens, and the only thing that we're still hanging up on is the walk-in cooler. They're longer wait times than we expected, so that won't be in this summer, but we plan to, wait in line for the walk-in cooler. Some other things that we've been able to do to get the building ready for school is we did campus-wide roof repairs, rooftop unit 12 compressor replacement, rooftop unit 13 and 14 replacement with a heat pump system, so that's the large cafeteria, and then rooftop unit 4 replacement with the heat pump system, which is the boys locker room in the field house, and also with the heat pump system. So if we do going forward think heat pumps is the right way down the path, we already have some things that could be used in that direction. And we also aerated and overseeded our athletic fields 2, 6, 7, 8, and 9, and the outfields of the baseball fields and the softball field, just because our fields have been a major issue as of the past few years. So just a update on that, and then some upcoming meeting dates. We meet tomorrow, and then the end of the month, and then September 11th and September 16th, we have negotiations where we'll be submitting our best, last, and final. So we're feeling hopeful about that, and hopefully that's a good, productive meeting. Our negotiations are live streamed on YouTube, so if you guys want to come check it out on YouTube, feel free. And that's all I got, but if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain them.
Did any of the units, bite the dust this summer like they had some last summer?
So not yet. Those were all things that we knew prior to town meeting that we had to do over the summer to get the building in shape for next year.
But, nothing has failed.
Not that I know.
All right.
This was, the list I got was from
Are the
July 12th, so not since then.
Okay. Well, let's keep
Or
our
July,
fingers crossed.
July 2nd, sorry. So not since July 2nd.
And then the negotiations, just for the people watching it, is pertains with the
The
union?
Teachers Association.
Okay.
Yep. So those are live streamed on our YouTube channel.
Is that teacher and paras or just teachers?
just teachers. But we also are in negotiations with our paraprofessional unit, but those are not live streamed.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions, or?
I do not.
Thank you for the update, Trevor.
Of course.
Appreciate it.
Trevor, thank you.
Of course.
All right, and anyone else present for public comment? No? Okay, then we'll move right to number 3, which is the Middleton Municipal Campus updates. And thought it would be good, so everyone obviously has seen firsthand the construction going on, but maybe get some in more detail.
Yeah, we can't see too much with
Yeah.
the blacked out fence.
And you know what you need is a good time-lapse video.
Which I have.
Oh, look at that. What a good lead-in.
Segue.
It's a plant.
So Brian LaRoche, I'm the project manager for PCA 360. So just give you a quick update of where things stand. The construction schedule, we're into foundations for the public safety building. We're actually getting fairly close to wrapping them up. So we're even earlier than the schedule that I presented to you before. And then they're going to be moving into the town hall starting next week, laying the foundations. All of the bearing strata has been established. All the grading has been done around the town hall. So they've really done a really good job of establishing the site. And then steel, which when I presented this to you the last time, was going to be early October. Right now we have a tentative date in early September for steel.
Wow.
So far so good. Things are moving along well.
Is that
We had
delivery or start?
delivery to the site. Yeah.
good.
So you know that if that's what we're talking about, that's a good thing.
No, I agree.
Our overall schedule has us starting in early October. The site, we have had very few surprises. You never knew with the golf course what. Yeah, exactly. Fingers crossed. What they would have brought into the site to create the contouring and so forth. So we thought we might be encountering some unsuitable soils, which we didn't. But we did get some bedrock in the public safety building. Wasn't a lot, so we did have some that we had to encounter. And you'll see in a moment, we have an allowance in our budget for unsuitable soils. We use that to cover the cost for the removal of the bedrock. So, but we've already established the lowest point of excavation throughout the site. So at this point, everything's being built up. So all good.
Do you have an estimate on how far down you actually go? You've gone?
From the deepest cut
you know.
that we've had, about 8 feet was probably the
Okay,
deepest
because I
cut.
think we can all visually kind of picture still
Yeah.
what it looked like, and I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, some of the high points have gotten
Yeah.
leveled out. The soil's actually pretty good on site, so we're working very hard to balance the soil on the site, so we're not exporting. Most of it we're able to reuse, which is pretty good.
Thank you.
So here's a picture from last week of, this is the front edge of the public safety building. This will become the apparatus bays. And then you can see in the distance, the golf course clubhouse was still up a week ago and is now gone. So standing on top of that giant mound of dirt that you can see looking
Mount
down over, this is the public safety building. So you can see police on this end. And then as you come around, this is the offices of the fire. And then the front of the apparatus bay is over here. And then Route 114 you can see running along there. So here's the time-lapse video. This is only a short time. We just got the cameras set up because we needed temporary power, so we couldn't get the cameras up any sooner. So this is really right after 4th of July till last week. So it only covers maybe like a 2.5 week period. But give you an idea of what's going on in the activity. We have this posted up on the project website, Middleton-MMC. So I'll update it once a week, and it'll keep getting longer and longer as we go. Here's the clubhouse. I know that's very sentimental in the town. So we did take a lot of photos of the day that it did come down so that we have that documented, and they're on the website. So if anybody is interested, you can see that. This is just a quick snapshot of the website. This is the construction tab. So on the construction tab, you have the time-lapse video, you have photos. I'll keep this updated every week with new photos of the actual work going on. And then we have our project blog, which I'm very proud of. We finally got the social media reestablished. Facebook had changed their parameters for how we can link a it's a commercial page, so it took us a little while to figure that out with them. But our blogs will start posting up to Instagram and Facebook so that people can see. And I'll be issuing an update every 2 weeks on that. The website has done really well. We're almost 8,000 views so far. We've had just over 1,000 views in the last 30 days. At our social media, now that I've got it properly linked, just in the last 30 days, 187 hits. So 1,200 views of our social media. That should start to really ramp up pretty quickly because we're going to be posting more and more as we go. So quick budget update. All good news on the overall project budget. We, as you know, realized some savings during the buyout of the project, which is floated down to the contingencies. So we still have a very robust contingency of $4.7 million. And soft cost contingency has not been used at all. So all good news there. We have had some additional buyouts that have happened recently, and we've continued to realize some additional savings too. So we're feeling very good about where things stand. We had some allowances for some unforeseen things that we might encounter, and so far we haven't needed to use many of them at all. So it's good to report. We are looking for, the building committee met last week, and they approved, we have an alternate. We had 3 alternates in the project in their contract. 2 of them, they asked us to hold off on awarding. So it's built into the number, so the cost is all preserved, but we have to act on those before September. They'll hold the pricing till then. So one of them that the committee decided to move forward with was the gazebo. That's what we call alternate 3. The overall cost is $248,000, but that's not the cost of the gazebo. There's a lot of other work that goes into it. This is the location right up front, Route 114 here. So all the sidewalks, the paving, the foundation structure, electrical that goes with it, all is included in that number. The actual cost of the gazebo is about $85,000. And that's, it's more of a pavilion, and we were talking about this, because it's different than the bandstand that the town has right now. This is set at grade, so it's not elevated, so it's all at one level. So this is a 24-foot octagon, so it's larger in volume, it's flat, open side, so you don't have any railings, so it really acts like a pavilion for gathering. So the committee did decide to move forward on that. So were you looking for a vote of this committee to move that forward?
They voted on the canopy one when we accepted that with the GMP, so I think they need to vote on alternate 3 as well.
Okay. So I don't know how you want to do that. If you want me to finish and then we'll come back to it, or however. I have a few other things that you'll have to act on. So I don't know if you want to take them as they come.
Mr. Chair, do you have a preference?
Is there the 2, I see 2 votes?
The other will be amendments to the architect's contract. And then we have our first change order, which we finalized today, and so it's ready for signature. So I was just going to present that to you. It's really just one item. It's easy to explain.
All right, maybe you're going to show us, maybe we should just wait till the end?
Sure.
Yeah,
No
thanks.
problem. Okay. So any questions on the gazebo?
Yes, I have a question on the materials and the longevity of it. Can you get into that, like the expected life expectancy of it and of the materials that it's going to be made out of?
I don't have a good handle. It's a manufactured product. So it's not like I can go in the drawings and look at the materials. It's bought from a manufacturer. There are 3 manufacturers. Honestly, I don't know the material. I can get that and present to you the next time of what it is.
It's just the longevity. I'm just wondering, does it projected to last 30 years, 40 years, 10 years? That's why I asked.
I'll find that out and I'll get that information to you. Thank you.
And there's going to be power there, correct?
Yes, there will. Yep.
And how far back is this from 114?
Picture
that you showed.
Yep. So this is the stone wall, and the sidewalk is just beyond. So the distance is 35, so you're looking at about 50 feet back from the road.
Okay, great.
And then, like I said, there's a the stone retaining wall at the front of the property, and the sidewalks enter left and right and come in.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
So you said electric, but there's no irrigation, no plumbing or anything like that to
We're
that?
working on that with the building committee.
I mean, I don't want like sprinkle like the, I'm saying, like, I'm sure it'll be beautiful, and we have a garden, a garden committee that, I'm sure they would like to, labor of love as they are, and I wouldn't want to
Yeah.
see them all in water from
No, all the plants on the project are all drought tolerant, native, so none of the planting material requires irrigation.
Well, we may want to accessorize at some point, I don't know.
Maybe have a spigot there if
Yeah,
they need
Something to clean it, to hose it off.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we are looking into, with the building committee, to add
Okay.
irrigation to the town green.
Great.
So it's something we're working on right now.
thank you.
So this is the change order one that we've received on the project. These, what we call PCOs, they're proposed change orders. These are the small moves within the budget. They're all these are $0 to the town, or except for one. And the reason being is it's our moving money around within the GMP budget. We track every move within the budget that was approved by you. And so these are the mechanisms that we do that. So if we use any allowances or holds within the budget, this is, so unsuitable soils, for example, you'll see two PCOs for that. The one that changed contract, the increased contract, is the builder's risk policy. Our original plan was to have the town purchase that directly through their insurance vendor, I don't know what you would describe them. And the pricing that we were getting was substantially higher than we were expecting. And the reason being is the insurance companies have had some major losses in the last 5 or 6 years with wood frame buildings. Although the public safety building and the town hall are not a wood frame building, the roofs are. So the insurance companies are considering the whole building as just wood. So unfortunately, that puts you in a very different risk category. So the numbers we were receiving were quite high. They were in the 600,000 and higher range for the policy. So we went to the construction manager and asked them to go through their insurance provider to see if they could get builder's risk. A lot of times the policy comes through them, so they actually they buy it more often, so they have better competition. So we ended up getting the policy for $342,000. So I had 165 in our budget on the owner's side of the ledger, and so this net cost ultimately is not a full 343 to you in our budget. I already had money allocated to it, so we have plenty of contingency available in the project. So this is a very small item for us to take. So the actual change order that you'll be signing to increase the contract will be this $342,000. Okay.
I have to ask, with terrorism coverage? That's
It was
actually a
this
thing?
very
But it's
small add-on to the rider.
I think it was $4,000.
It was just shy of $4,000.
That was one where I knew if we said we didn't want it, something was going to happen. So
Yeah, no, I'm not
money-
finding
money
fault,
well
I'm
spent.
just,
Yeah.
It also avoids, the question if something is terrorism or not terrorism. And if you have the coverage, it
Right.
Yeah.
does away with the
The
question.
grand scheme of things, it seemed like a very
Oh,
small
understood.
thing to add, and then we were just covered blanket across. Yeah. All right, and then our amendments to contract for the architect. Some of these are not new. We're just catching up on some of the paperwork we need you to sign, so we're presenting. These have been approved, and the work has proceeded in some cases. So I'll take them in order as they are presented here. So the top line, Meld Electric, we broke out the costs associated with the Meld peak load shaving generator because the interior of the building was one very discrete scope of electrical impacts. And in order to get the electrical engineer moving as quickly as possible, we broke that out as a separate cost so they can move forward. We were still flushing out the site impacts. We hadn't placed the generator. The building committee looked at, I think we were on 8 options, or 7A was our final option. So we were still sort of moving the generator around the site, trying to find that. So while that was happening, we said, let's get the interior going. So that's why we broke this out. So that's why these two say building electric and site. And so, one of the concerns we had on the building electric is the generators are very long lead time, the switchgear and so forth. So we needed to get that on order as quickly as possible so we weren't impacting. The site wasn't as pressing. Most of it's just concrete pads and conduit underground. It's really, there's no equipment that impacts the schedule. So that's why I have these broken out. So this is not just the architect, it's their engineering, the civil engineering, electrical engineering, and that's it, associated with these two. And then septic redesign, that had to do with, during our permitting, the Board of Health asked us to increase the flow rate for the function room, the community room on the first floor for the community center. When it was presented by the design team, they did it as a business use, and that had a lower flow rate, so we had to redesign the system to the higher rates. So that required a redesign, and that's the 5,500. And then this MELD 3D model, Amendment 10, for 8,630. That was some preliminary 3D modeling that the architect was doing to help the building committee understand the size of this generator is quite large, and they wanted to be able to see it in context in relation to the parking, the landscaping, the buildings, to see and really understand where the right placement was. So before we could let our engineering staff go, the architect had to do quite a bit in plan and 3D to study this for the building committee. So it resulted in this cost here plus, I think I deleted it. There was an additional effort of another 2,800. So it's those two costs. It's 10 and 10A. I have two proposals. I don't know why I deleted that off the slide. And then town green electric. That was during when we were finalizing the scope of work. As this cost-saving measure, the building committee decided to delete the electrical from the town green. And then since, when we went to GMP, we said we could put it back because we bought the project out, below the budget. So they were able to put it back in. So there was some cost to have the design team put it back in the design. Irrigation, we received proposals from the design team to add irrigation, reuse the existing well from the golf course. And the proposal that we got was quite high. The building committee rejected that and asked our construction manager to go to the landscaper and see if they could do a design-build option. So they gave us a design-build option. We presented to the building committee last week. It covered the whole site. It was massive. And that all in was $200,000. So right now the town, DPW, is looking at a much pared-down version of that. I think we're going to get well under $100,000 for irrigating and reusing the well. So that's where we're at right now. So that was rejected by the building committee. And then we had some fee in our original contract for context architecture for early site packages and phasing the project. We ended up not doing that because there was too much volatility in the market with the costs. We didn't want to release the project into construction and not have it fully bought out. So we decided not to do that. So we're taking that out of their contract. So we have $35,000 that is coming back to the town, which will help cover some of these things. And then Mass DOT in our drawing review, we completed the 25% drawing review. They asked for the main entrance driveway to the project to be, the radiuses to be increased. And that resulted in a drawing redesign for the traffic engineer to update their drawings and also for the civil engineer. So that's the $1,100. So those are all the costs.
I ask, is 8A and 8B and 10 all related just to the generator?
Yes, they are.
So a question for Justin, does Mel contribute anything toward this?
It's a good question. So that expense net is actually still going to be a significant savings in the six figures range based on what we had previously discussed. In addition to that, and we still have to finalize the MOU, but I've received a verbal commitment anyway. It still needs to be approved by their board that MELD would split those costs on top of the savings that we're gonna see anyway. So I just added that in as well. And in so many words, told them that it would be a nice gesture, and they agreed, so.
We have a pricing request out right now for the changes for the electrical, which reduce the size of the electrical generators for both buildings, reduce the number of transfer switches and the size of the switchgear. So we are expecting a credit change order, north of $100,000 to cover these costs. Plus, as Justin said, there's other cost sharing and cost savings that will come to the project as well.
Thanks.
Yep. I'll move on. I think that's it. Okay. So
At what point is the septic system going to be constructed, and is it in the front of the buildings or in the back?
it's in the front. It's in the town green. Is where both buildings have separate systems, but they'll both be at the front.
Okay. Thank you.
So with the wooden roof, so that is above, the actual rafters, and that's wood, where the rest of the building is
Yeah.
metal, metal.
Concrete, metal deck, concrete. In some areas, it's CMU walls,
Right.
steel frame.
But that's
It's
just cheaper than, using wood in that aspect is cheaper than,
Yeah, it was a cost-saving measure. So there are wood trusses for the roofs of both buildings. So I can go back to the original thing that we needed your.
all right. So that's 7 total amendments. If
Yeah, I
have
don't know
that
how
right.
you want to take the. You want to vote on in order by the gazebo, or however you want to do it.
I'm
You need us to do
Take them in
singular
order.
votes, or
Open and
can we
subject.
do it collective?
If you have an appetite to do them all together as presented, that's fine.
Can
Mr.
I
Chairman?
ask
Oh, that's good.
Go ahead, Mike. I mean,
So we're going to
sorry.
vote on alternate 3.
Correct.
What about 1, 2A, and 2B?
One is already in the GMP.
Okay.
So the building committee is not ready yet to vote on 2A, 2B. We'll be presenting that to them in their August 27th meeting, and then we'll come to you after they voted on it.
Gotcha.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve pursuant to the presentation that was made this evening, the amendments that were provided and detailed. In addition, the acceptance of alternate number 3.
Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any other discussion? If not, I'll ask, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Brian, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Brian.
Yep.
All right, so with number 4 on the agenda now, we'll be moving on for department head update from Nathan Stedman, our Veteran Services. So, hi, Nathan.
Hey, Nate.
How are you?
Mr. Chair, members of the board. So my name is Nathan Stedman. I'm the Director of Veteran Services. Just to give you a brief update on the activities of the office since I took over officially on June 1st. The handover from my predecessor, Mr. Kevin Walsh, has gone smoothly. Things are going well. The biggest item being the recertification of our Chapter 115 beneficiaries. Every July and January, they need to go through the recertification process. That went smoothly for all of them. So their receipt of their benefits will continue without any interruption. Also, for just on kind of procedure for our PA system that has been ordered, we are waiting for kind of 2 pieces to. They're on back order. They're finding another distributor to supply those, but they will be delivered, and so we will have that new PA system that we've been kind of needed. Otherwise, I've been continuing to assist veterans and or surviving spouses with a variety of different issues, a lot of that being with claims to Veterans Affairs or even things like applications for veterans plates through the RMV or disabled plates. And on the near to a bit longer term horizon, in the middle of August, August 14th, we will have another meeting for the Patriotic Observances Committee, and we will discuss how we can assist in the town's observance for September 11th. That's the main ticket for that meeting, but then also for Veterans Day, and then Wreaths Across America on December 14th. And that's about it for my update. I like to keep things succinct. So.
And have you been connected with the parties we do have in town that are involved with the Wreaths in America as well as the?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'll put you on solar research. Is that something annual that has to happen for that?
It's every July and January.
Okay.
So is that an involved process to the recertification?
It can be. The reason why it happens is, one, because the state needs to identify if the amounts of financial assistance provided, if they're aligned with the needs of that veteran or the surviving spouse. Adjustments in Social Security or in rent increases. So this biannual recertification ensures that the veteran or the surviving spouse is receiving the amount that they need.
I put you on the spot here. Can you tell us how many of our neighbors are actually veterans receiving services? How many do we have in town of our neighbors are veterans receiving services?
Chapter 115 services?
Yeah.
Currently 4.
How many?
4.
So Nate, question, not so much related to your role in Veteran Services, but to the work and the work that you do with the Patriotic Observance Committee. So historically, most of our observances either start or finish at the front lawn of the Flint Library. And it's worked the best as it could over the years, given that that was one of the locations that we had in town with the veterans monuments that are there. Has there been any discussion with the committee about what the future in our town, new town green common that's coming? I saw the gazebo. Now, obviously, we have our veterans memorials that are seated and situated at the front of the library. Is there any discussion while we are talking about the new facilities of either those memorials or any other memorials being at the new municipal complex? Because logically, that may be the location that makes sense. Maybe not for all of our observances, but future observances. I know in the past, one of your predecessors, I had talked about future memorials, residents that have served in the most recent conflicts, as well as I think there was a handful of names that might be missing from those memorials that had been identified. Do you know if that is being discussed at all with the committee, or you, Justin, if you know if there's any discussions in the future? Now, I know a lot of the activities, for example, some of it happens at the cemetery, but as much as I love the Flint Library, the problem that always happened there, it was very small, tight, and very loud with the vehicle traffic, because it's one of the questions why I asked how far back that gazebo was.
Well, there was a point in time when Veterans Day observances were done. All traffic on 114 and 62 was stopped for 10 minutes. So the observance didn't have to compete with the traffic noise. I think that may no longer be as viable, especially depending on the week that Veterans Day falls.
I mean, this isn't a decision that needs to be made immediately, but I think at some point we're going to have a town green and common that is going to be larger, more accessible, and utilized. And you saw the new gazebo, a pavilion that's going to be built there. I could imagine us doing some of our services there, so folks are out of the sun, or I don't know, out of the rain when weather doesn't accommodate. But I think at some point, and I'd love to help with this, is if there's an update that needs to be done with our memorials to reflect both the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq, but any other individuals that may be missing.
So I can answer a little bit of that anyway. From what I've heard since I've been here over the past year anyways, people are kind of nibbling around the edges of that conversation. I think for some people, they really like where it is and they would be offended by moving it. But I have heard that the argument you've laid out is that the town is making this large investment. You have this new pavilion and maybe it's the time to make a more fitting tribute and incorporate more recent wars. Kevin Welch had talked a little bit about that with my office, and I'm sure in the transition you'd mentioned a little bit as well.
Just a little bit, yes.
And an opportunity, after a service that happens there, we could go to our new multi-function room that's in the town hall, and collations and others that have happened there. And I know we've moved around different locations in town. I don't have a recommendation because I think, to your point, Justin, there's some history there, and folks have liked what we've had, but I think in opportunities like this, there's not a better time to talk about, what does the future hold, even if the future just is coming up with some memorials for Iraq and Afghanistan, and find an opportunity, if there's other names that are missing from the existing memorials, to make sure that they're added. And again, I'd love to lean in with you and assist in any way in that. So if there's a way that I can help, my hand's raised.
Well, thank you. And I'll bring this up at the next meeting as well.
Justin, can I ask a question? Is there a pretty good-sized flagpole planned for the new complex?
Yes.
And where is it in relation to the gazebo?
It's going to be closer to the buildings. I don't believe there's one near the gazebo.
There's actually, there's 2 flagpole sets.
Near the gazebo?
Yes, well, not near, but so when you're facing the site from 114, the gazebo's here, there's one set of flags in front of the town hall side.
Set
and
back,
then,
yeah.
Yes, and then there's one set that's right in front of public safety, which is actually the nearest.
Right, both in front of the buildings, but nothing near the pavilion.
But public safety is to the side,
Right,
closer to
yeah.
the common.
So I'm assuming the memorial that's in front of the police department will be coming to the new facility.
And I don't want to speak for Nathan. I know Patriotic Observances Committee has already had preliminary conversations, because there's also the factor of the parade goes to Oakdale, and it's going to be hard to get from
That's
the
a
new
long
campus
hike.
to Oak. I mean, it's a long hike now for the kids. So I think they've started conversations. So I think you'll
Yeah.
find your
Well, even because previously we would start at the library, go to the cemetery, and then come back, potentially keeping it as from the library to the cemetery, ending as we did this time for Memorial Day. That did seem to work well with the ice cream truck and everything. That seemed to be a hit. So there is certainly flexibility in discussion.
Okay.
Thank you, Nate.
Okay, thank you.
Very much.
Thanks. Great job.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Nate.
Nathan.
Great job. Okay, and next, we're a response to an open meeting law complaint pertaining to our last July 9th, 2024 Select Board meeting, in which we had an open meeting, a public meeting for appointment of a vacancy to the Library Trustee Committee. That was a joint meeting between the Select Board and the Library Trustees, and just wanted to speak in response to the action that we received on that, if you would, Justin.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chair. So we received the complaint on July 12th. We do have an opportunity as an organization to discuss this in executive session. However, it was the preference to do it in open session. Just given what we're describing here, there's nothing to hide. It was a procedural issue. So there were 3 items highlighted in particular. One was that the boards did not list the candidates to be considered in advance for the Board of Library Trustees on the agenda. Number 2 was that the agenda referenced an attached list, but there was not an attached list. And the third, the agenda was not legally posted on the official posting location, which is something that lies with the division of open government. You just post what your website is for posting. And so we did work with our legal counsel to develop a response where we do acknowledge the requirements of the open meeting law. We do stress, though, in terms of listing individuals, that it would not be reasonable for the chair to anticipate a full final list due to the fact that an individual could come and self-nominate the night of. Several individuals could, and so there's no way to really provide that. However, in a good faith effort to comply, we are willing to release the final list and future lists as complete that we could within reason. The other piece regarding the posting of the website, we do have backup actually from our town clerk, who, as always, is extraordinarily thorough. A communication from January 25th, 2018 to the Office of the Attorney General, where she did notify them that we are switching from middleton.org to middleton.gov. It was just never updated on the state website. So we'll be reaching out to them, and we have started the process to reach out to them to just formally update it. Any reasonable person, if they put in town to middleton.org,
Right.
would look further to .gov, but we would just want to make sure that the
Is
state
the
has
town
it
of
right.
Middleton.org link still live?
So it used to be, and it used to forward, but apparently it hasn't for some time now. So it, for all practical reasons, wasn't really an issue.
So that was an issue with the Attorney General's office, not an issue on our end?
Correct.
Okay.
So just to kind of underline that. But that said, we're happy to, help clear up whatever the issue is there. So we'll be issuing this response. I would request 2 votes from the board tonight. One, just to accept this response and to authorize me to send it out. The second is just to once again vote so that we can reissue this letter to the state notifying them that we're adopting .gov rather than .com, or .org, just so we have a more recent vote in the minutes to forward to them.
But just to be clear, nowhere in the complaint did it assert that, for the lack of those 3 technicalities there, that we impugned or, did anything to harm the actual process. I mean, it was the people who did apply were here. And again, it's open to up until the vote, if
Right.
someone were to walk through the door and want to be in. So any list beforehand is, in theory, incomplete anyway. And there was one person who did wound up dropping off that list prior to it. I don't know that impacts it, but all those listed were given time to speak, and all votes were taken, above and above board, but I just wanted to say that, so.
Yeah, so I think this board has, and I can't speak for the library trustees because that was a joint meeting, but I think this board on this appointment and any other appointment has tried to be as accommodating for individuals that would like to be considered for appointments, whether it was a joint appointment like this or any of the other committees. I think Jeff brought up at a previous meeting, it's exciting when there are new candidates that want to be considered for appointment. It's a little disheartening if they're trying to slap our wrist because we didn't list candidates when literally somebody could walk in the room and say, you know what, I was thinking about it and I want to be a candidate, because I don't want to preclude somebody from wanting to be part of the process, nor would I want to say, okay, the board's appointing on July 9th, June 30th is the last day that you can be a candidate. I mean, this is not an actual election where you have to file nomination papers and go through a process. But I think point well taken, and I think in the letter that you've described here, we're going to, in the future, ensure that the transparency that we've already provided is maybe more transparent. I would highly recommend in future appointments we do not close a date in the future. Maybe what the agenda states is potential candidates as of a date, and knowing that that could change. As a committee, we may have line of sight to that, but as long as we're being clear. On the issue of the letter that will be part of the second motion, as long as the motion to the communication to the Attorney General's office is reiterating again and providing backup that in 2018 we had provided this update. Unfortunately, Attorney General Haley's office didn't update it correctly, and now that link was no longer active, that it issued had become an issue, but as long as that's in such the statement that we're sending to the Attorney General's office. So as part of that, Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion that we accept the complaint that we have received, and we also, as part of that motion, designate the town administrator to respond accordingly.
I'll second that.
Great. Could I make a comment? Do you think we should include in the letter Brian's comment, which I fully agree with, that in the future we'll list applicants received as of the posting?
Yeah, and
May not be
think
complete.
and I
Should that
think
be in the letter
including
that
that,
we're
yeah,
gonna do that?
I think that's reasonable, but also state that we don't at any way want to infringe on somebody's decision.
Right,
I mean, because say we close it 2 weeks in advance, somebody may not know that there's a vacancy for any of our committees or appointments that are happening until sometimes, sometimes we post an agenda and somebody may say, oh, I didn't know there was a vacancy. I'd be interested in that. So, and I think learning experience for all ourselves, maybe the Attorney General's office, that, we all can do a little bit better. But I'm comfortable. I think Justin understands the gist of the
Yeah.
board and the direction that he's making on that.
The way I'm 100% in agreement,
Yep.
the way you laid it out, Brian, is exactly.
Well, I'll add a line or two in there in that spirit.
Okay.
And I would also actually note where it was a joint meeting that the library wasn't named in the open meeting law complaint. However, they will address it at their upcoming meeting, at my request anyway, through the chair, just to acknowledge that this board had this conversation this evening and that this was your response, just so it's in their minutes as well.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. So we do have a motion and a second.
We did.
No any further discussion? I'll ask, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None, so it passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, I also make a motion that we direct the town administrator and the town clerk to contact the Attorney General's office to reiterate again the change in the town's website, but also include as part of that package the 2018 notification that we had provided to the Attorney General's office, and also ask the Attorney General's office to provide affirmative confirmation back to the town once that change has been made.
Very good. And,
Second.
We have a second. Okay, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? No? It passed unanimously. Thank you, Brian. And thank you, Justin. Thank you all. All right, so let's see here. Now we will move on to number 6. It's going to be review and vote on application for a new common victualler for Ferncroft Corporate Center, 35 Village Road, Middleton, Mass. 01949. Manager Angelo Sinesis, if I pronounced that correctly. Hi.
How are you?
Just identify yourselves and what address in town you're. Yeah.
And I'm Chris Mejias. Angelo will be running the cafe, and we are the landlord of the cafe.
Okay. Is that the same location for us going on the first floor and over to the left there?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. Has there not been one, if they let that go, or?
It was closed down during the pandemic, so it
Oh,
hasn't been
okay,
open
never
since,
came back.
4 or 5 years now.
Okay.
Is the building fully rented?
It's about, I'd say about 80%. We're getting closer. We just did over the complete lobby, so it's a little more enticing, and once food's in there, it hopefully makes people gather.
And is that open to people who may want to buy food that don't work in the building, or only to the building?
It's set up for only the employees and business owners in the building.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I make a note that this common vic should be contingent on the business receiving approval from the building commissioner, fire department, and health department before we'll issue it?
We
And
got
are
approval.
Are those items on track?
I think it's just health pending.
No,
we-
no, I haven't.
we just
It
passed the
was,
health
yeah, we
inspection.
passed,
Today?
no,
Last week, was it?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago?
I got
I
a note
have the
from
copy.
Director Mello that the food establishment permit wasn't issued because of a noise violation issue.
No, we have the
Well,
approved permit.
We should check in tomorrow.
Okay.
Either way, that's a very normal contingency, is that
Okay.
you're in compliance with all 3 of those departments.
Okay.
Before this body issues a license.
Yes.
But we should check in, because Director Mello said she reached out to you today. From the
I
health
did not hear
department.
from her today.
So I guess there's some outstanding noise violations for the
Okay.
building, so we should check in tomorrow, maybe
Okay.
with the health director.
No problem, we can do that, for sure.
Any other discussion at all, or questions?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve a common victualler license for Ferncroft Corporate Center located at 35 Village Road in Middleton, Massachusetts, with the manager Angelo Sinesis, and also contingent upon the successful approval of Board of Health,
Building and fire.
building and fire inspections.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None, passed unanimously.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, so just, as Jackie said, touch base again.
Well, I'll call her
and-
tomorrow. Thank you, Jackie. I appreciate all your help.
Small, but all right, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, you as well.
Okay, and if we go to number 7, I believe Costa can provide us with an update from the liaison for Masconomet Working Group.
Yes, last Tuesday I'd organized a meeting with Barbara Jessel of Boxford, Marshall Hook of Topsfield, and Joe McLean of Masco. And, we met, we had a nice discussion for about an hour or so. And the sort of conclusions were that Boxford and Topsfield really prefer the method of approving design funds in one vote, and then doing the design, getting going out to bid, having the actual bids, and then asking for the construction funds. So it wouldn't, any project that they typically do involves 2 votes and typically 2 override votes. Joe McLean raised the question of if Masco spent some of its stabilization funds to update and get a sort of a third-party look at costs, similar to the Habib report that was done in 17, if that would lend their request more credibility. If the response back was no, then why spend the money? Masco is having its annual goal-setting retreat, at the end of August, and Joe McLean asked that if we could meet again, prior to that meeting, and sort of give them feedback of what we're all thinking, so that it can go into that goal-setting meeting, with what the towns would, like to see, and sort of try to gear the goals toward that process. Like all of us that were in that meeting, we are all members of a board, and we can't make a promise on behalf of our board without knowing where our board stands. And we're also like to be gathering, feedback on what could make the process more conducive to ending up with all 6 boards, 3 select boards and all 3 FinComs, supporting a proposal. So that's part of the reason this is on the agenda, for all of you to have an opportunity to sort of give me feedback on what you'd like to see. Some of my thoughts was that when anybody asks a question from whether it's the FinCom or a select board member from any of the towns, that everybody gets to sees the question and everybody sees the answer. So everybody gets the information at the same time and in the same format, so that it avoids the feeling that, well, Topsfield, got this, early, and we didn't get it until 3 weeks later, and I think, everybody's can be easier to be on the same page. And I think having, a third-party estimate, which is the basis for asking for money is nothing but a positive. And I guess the other thing, if all the work that Masco needs to do is going to be done in different buckets, and each bucket has 2 votes separated by probably 2 years. How many buckets and how many, I could stretch out a long period of time. So think, about that. What kind, do you want to see it in 2 buckets, which means 4 votes, 3 buckets, which means 6 votes? And how soon between, you have the design money for 1 bucket, 2 years later, the construction money for that bucket, and then how soon do you come back for the design money for the next bucket?
So I'll reiterate kind of the point I made on town meeting floor, which is, it wasn't opposition to the project, it was opposition to the process. I wasn't at the meeting you were at, Costa, but I think the 2 towns would do very well to actually join in a conversation with the school building authority. I think it would be very helpful for them to hear that. Secondly, as I said on the floor of town meeting, is I think there's going to be significant I think the voters and the taxpayers, and I'm not going to speak for Topsfield and Boxford because A, I don't represent them, and B, I don't live there. But I feel like as a representative of Middleton, there's going to be some tiredness by the voters and the taxpayers in Middleton if we're looking at 2, 4, 6, or 8 separate overrides. And I think, to your point, Custer, I think you made this very early on in the discussion, is if there is a plethora of need there, let's lay it all out, figure out what that is, and do it.
Exactly.
We did the same thing with the project that we were just presented on here. We had originally talked about phasing that, and I will tell you, if we had phased that, we would have a new police and fire station, and we would not have any plans in the future for a senior community center, and town hall would still be what it is. Now, the voters invested in that, and we did have to come back again. But if we came back for 4 different votes on that, I think the whole project could have been in jeopardy. Again, I'm not speaking for Boxford or Topsfield. I would much rather see this as a larger singular package. Lastly, is if it's using their E&D dollars to actually go in and bring in a consultant to actually get a better view of that, I would greatly welcome that, and I would be open to that happening just for that reason, because I think the conversation, way back when, well, not that long ago, when the superintendent came in and kind of showed his plans for phase 1, phase 1 was fairly clear what he wanted to do. I think we disagreed with how they wanted to do it. Phase 2 and 3 was about as clear as mud for me. And I think some of that was, well, this is what we think the needs are, and the dollar amount where someone
Vague.
took a dart, put their hand over their eyes, and
Yes.
threw it at the wall. And again, I don't speak for Boxford and Topsfield, but I will tell you in Middleton, if that's the approach that we took, I mean, quite honestly, Justin, if you came into this board and said, here's our capital plan, and, our year 2 and 3 of the capital plan is, I think this much, and I'm not sure what it's going to be, and, but we'll get to it, I'm going to be asking for an override for that. That wouldn't pass muster in this board, and it surely wouldn't pass muster at town meeting. So I'm going to stand firm in my position that I think we should look at this more holistically. And as I also said at town meeting, and Trevor was here from Masco today talking about the updates they've done with some of the new AC units and heat pump units that were put in. We're going to know sooner than later if that's going to be a reimbursable number. If heat pumps aren't reimbursable, I'm not opposed to taking a step back and say, let's just do this all now. Roof, HVAC, building management controls, and doing that at once, and getting this project probably back on a schedule that would still be ahead of what they were talking about at town meeting last year. But at the same time, we can't do this, come to our voters and our taxpayers and ask for this, and then say, but we're coming back in 2 years, and then another year for that for design, and then the year after that. The voters are going to be, the taxpayers are going to be exhausted. They truly will. And projects that probably need to be addressed aren't going to get addressed.
And that
I agree.
doesn't even factor in any projects that any of the towns want to do in town. You know, if all these other overrides.
Well,
And
we're probably not doing any more projects, right?
not big ones. But, you know, and you know, that discussion is really more with Boxford and Topsfield. Because I think, you know, Masco, you know, would say, you want us to come all, you know, for everything? Fine, you know, we'll come for everything. But they're not going to do that, you know, if the coming for everything increases their chances of passage in Middleton and tanks them in Boxford and Topsfield. So we kind of have to, the three towns have to.
Well, it can't be all or none. There has to be some compromise here, and the compromise can't be two towns want one way and maybe one town, and I'm not speaking for the FinCom or other members of this board, but if Middleton comes at it with a, we don't want to have 6 override votes over 3, 4, 5 years, but Boxford and Topsfield does, the jeopardy is this town may say no. And I'm not prejudging, but this board may not be behind this. The FinCom may not be behind this. And lesson learned from this year's town meeting is the more unanimity you have among the committees in the process, the more likely something is going to pass. The less unanimity you have, the less likely it's going to pass.
Unanimity is worth 5% at the polls from our election results. So 5% is 5%, but that 5% doesn't get Masco over the line. They have to do some other things to engage the community, drive the vote, and with.
And the other thing that I would say in terms of engagement and drive, so, and I've said this, and I know some folks on this subcommittee that you're working on may have disagreed with it, but I'll say it again. I give a lot of credit to our Masco school committee representatives for, they've leaned forward greatly on this.
They did.
I want to hear more from the administration and not just the school committee, and that includes both the superintendent and the assistant superintendent for finance and operations.
Brian, we've asked for that multiple times, and it seems to me like it falls on deaf ears.
And again, Topsfield and Boxford may be happy with the process they have. I don't control Boxford and Topsfield, just like Boxford and Topsfield doesn't control Middleton. This is what you get in a regional school district, love it or hate it, on an override need, it has to be unanimous.
There is an exception, district-wide vote.
Is that, Costa?
I didn't hear you
It's
either.
I don't know the process that, or the steps that they would.
Mention it in your breakout.
I would never support a district-wide vote because Middleton's vote could either get watered down or overemphasized. Boxford vote could get watered down or open. Because here's the reality. I'll say it again. We're 3 different towns that may have a different approach to this, and this is where regional school districts have to work within the confines of 3 towns, 3 town meetings, and we may be the tri-town region, but every town's different. There's a different there's different activities that's happening in town, there's different tax capabilities in town, there's different projects happening. I mean, Topsfield, a couple of years back, went through a lot of capital projects in their town. We're eyeballs deep in it right now. We got good news from our update today, but we're still eyeballs deep in it. And so I would not support a single district-wide vote. I think it still needs to be the process that it's always been.
Yeah, but
I agree.
so do I. But I'm saying, Masco may have a regional school committee may have the ability to call for a district-wide vote, regardless of what the individual town governments
So does
support.
anybody remember what happened, I think it was this spring, on a district-wide vote for another regional school district? It was the regional,
Technical.
technical school up in Haverhill. That was known as the tail wagging the dog. And that school heard loud and clear, well, one town voted for it, and every town voted no. If the district wants to listen to Middleton, and I'm not saying this is what I want and Boxford and Topsfield want something different, ergo, they must do what we want. We all have to compromise here. And the person or persons that need to be helping to drive this compromise is the superintendent and the assistant superintendent for finance and operations, not just the Middleton School Committee, Masco School Committee representatives, or the Topsfield, or the select board member from Middleton, or the select board member from Boxford. It needs to be the administration that needs to actually show the leadership on this. And I appreciate that his school committee is working hard on this, as they should, but this is an administration run. We see it clearly in the project that's happening here in town. It's not being run by this board, it's being run through the leadership of our town administrator and our assistant town administrator, through the building committee. So, I mean, I can beat this horse to death all night. I want to compromise. The project needs to get done, but I'm not Nostradamus, but if we go for 6 overrides over 3 to 4 or 5 years, here's what's going to happen. The first one's going to pass, and then everything's going to be DOA.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think it was interesting in your breakdown, cost of the housing stock. I don't think that should be overlooked, certainly at least, these days. If it's a estimate, that many people in Boxford and Topsfield, the residences, the homes, have children coming or are in school, and in Middleton, that's simply not the case. It's, the amount of 65%, like you mentioned, and the balance being condominiums that, like you said, while not age restricted, they're not generally, originally from town, and they're not younger, and they're not planning to have kids in that school. That's a lot of votes to not get. On top of the fact that they don't seem like they tend to do the work with educating, a target audience like the voter group, target them and let them know what it is. Otherwise, those people are guaranteed no.
I mean, don't lose sight of the fact, we went to town meeting, the Masco issue failed, and then 5 minutes after that happened, the roof of this building passed overwhelmingly for the process to begin there. That was very telling to me. Again,
Because it was their process.
well, it was the process, and it goes back to the work that Superintendent Morrison and Assistant Superintendent Greenberg and Town Administrator Saltzback and our finance team work collaboratively, and our finance committee, our school committee, and the select board were all on board.
And it was transparent.
It was transparent. We went to town meeting and asked for the largest override in the history of this town for a major project. And we all remember that town meeting outside. It was 150 degrees in the shade under that tent. And that wasn't even the most contentious discussion that day at town meeting. The bigger contention was some change to our charter, and it was literally a language change. And that passed overwhelmingly. And trust me, the folks that raised their hand were not excited about raising their taxes. They were more excited about getting a project done and done correctly.
Well, and again, I remember the education process and how long it took before we got to that day.
And we learned from it.
Yep.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think became evident from this past election that was different than in 2016 was mail-in and early voting, which means we have to shift our education process at least 3 weeks earlier, so that when the ballots start arriving at the homes, people have already been made aware of this issue. So, because, they may vote the day they get their ballot, or they may vote
I would
a
argue,
week later, or 2 weeks
I would
later.
argue for the override question that was on the ballot this year, that happened the week after town meeting. If there wasn't mail-in ballots that were happening beforehand, I think the margin of failure at the ballot box would have been larger. Because there were a lot of folks that sat at town meeting and had no idea of what had happened and hadn't happened in that process. And when it was described, I sat there doing my part in describing it, and I watched people literally cock their head to the side as they listened, and started to hear of what we had been talking about for weeks and weeks and weeks. And as much as I think everybody sits at home and watches this meeting constantly, the reality is people don't really tune into town meeting until a couple of days before town meeting when they study their warrant. They're very educated folks and very engaged folks, but sometimes decisions are not made until at that moment. Some of the folks had probably already voted for the override, not knowing that there was opposition by some of the leader groups and boards in town, but also some of the history behind it. So there's going to be a lot more discussion on the next override in advance, and not just happening on the floor of town meeting. And that's where Masco or any future override that we're going to do here has to be done in a different manner.
But I would offer, because I've heard the getting out before the ballot things before, but I would note we got to Fuller Pond and Ferncroft and had 3 public info sessions before the ballots even hit the mail. So it's definitely an element. I don't want to discount it, but I've heard that argument cycle a little bit, and I feel like I need to correct the record every time I hear it. But point taken.
Okay. Well, it costs a thank you for,
Yeah, thank you for taking this on. You're a glutton for punishment.
Great. No, but I mean, it's so much, there's so much there, and, it's, the days of just, coming, sliding the bill across the table, I'm sorry, and we're not I'm not in the business of wagering town taxpayer money when I know to win, I'm gonna lose a little, if you know when in regards to the reimbursement thing, I just,
Well, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there's
Can't
still
do
a
it.
project that needs to be done there.
Yeah.
And this wasn't an opposition to the project, it was opposition to the process.
Correct.
And if we can get to a process that we are comfortable enough with, and the other 2 towns are comfortable enough with, then it's still all of our jobs, not the Masco administration, not the Masco school committee, but all of our jobs to sell that. I want to stand at town meeting and stand in the town square and advocate for this, not just oppose it.
and I would say a process that risked taxpayer money, not just not just how we want to see it done, but it had a loss potentially tied to it that we just couldn't approve. Thank you, Costa.
The next meeting of this group should be before our August 13th meeting, so I'll let you know what happens.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we'd like to move on to the appointments section now of the evening, and that's going to be, the first one we show here is the MBTA Advisory Board has a available seat. I'm not sure who wants to speak to that.
So,
Jeff was already on it.
No, I wasn't.
They thought so.
that one is less so an appointment this evening, but more so just a noticing to the public that we'd greatly accept any interest, and we're going to be posting on the website the invitation we received from the state, and maybe a little breakdown of the charge of what you would be doing on that committee. So there's
Can
no.
you describe the charge a little bit? Do any of us know exactly what that role entails?
So I served for 3 years
Depends on the day.
as an advisory board member when I was in Wakefield on the select board there. At the time, and it was a little bit different because Wakefield was a direct service community. There was buses and a commuter rail there. That was before the forward funding and the reform that happened with MBTA. I will tell you, I mean, I'm going to sound negative, but it was just a perfunctory board where the charge at the time was they had to bring things before the advisory board, so they would take the input at advisory board. We would somehow, like herding cats, come up with a recommendation, bring it back, that would go to the regular MBTA board, and they'd go, thank you very much. And that was kind of the end of it.
I have nothing to add.
I will say, I think now there's a lot more attention that's happening around communities that are now part of the MBTA, whether they even know they're part of the MBTA, like us, where technically we pay an assessment, it's on our cherry sheet every year, and we get absolutely out of it. I think there's a lot more focus, and I think there'll probably be a lot more opportunity for the MBTA Advisory Board to get a lot of disparate input. I just don't know if the advisory board is going to have anything more than the ability to say, this is what we think, and the MBTA and the administration of that to say, thank you so much.
Could you give an example of what would be that?
So at the time when I was on the board, the
Wakefield
ride
board
was
missed
just
one.
starting to expand, and we were making arguments about, because at the time, the ride stated that certain communities, they could pick you up to bring you there, but they had to drop you off somewhere in the community and not a door-to-door. Or if you, for example, North Reading was not a direct service community, so they would pick you up at 2 different locations in North Reading, but would bring you to an MBTA community that had public trans. Well, that was great, but if somebody was not able-bodied or was visually impaired, they actually had to go to the Marshall's parking lot in North Reading and wait there until the van picked them up, even if they lived elsewhere in North Reading. That was something that the advisory board pretty unanimously said, that doesn't work for the ride. We recommended it to the MBTA, and they went, thank you very much. And that stayed that way for several years until the legislature weighed in and said, no. And that all happened during forward funding. Now it's door-to-door service. That's just one example. And for us, our representative will be the voice of, we don't get service from you. Yeah, the ride comes into town, but the ride technically does serve this town. We don't have bus, we don't have commuter rail, we surely don't have rapid trans. We don't even have access from Middleton that could bring us to any of that. So I think somebody in the voice is that. I would argue there's been a lot of folks in town that have been very vocal and verbal about the MBTA zoning issue, and this isn't about the MBTA zoning issue, but it still ties to the MBTA. I can't think of a better opportunity to find somebody that has been very vocal on that to maybe want to be our representative on the board.
It'd be nice to get a bus that would pick people up in Middleton and bring them to a train station, because we're paying, it's coming out, Middleton's contributing.
Right.
Right.
So-
Brian, how many meetings, how
what's the
often are we here?
commitment?
Is it
Oh, I mean,
virtual? Is it in person?
they were always in person, or you could actually dial in the telephone. This was long before there was video
Yeah.
calls. That's back when I was young and had hair. I would say, I think there were like 3 or 4 meetings a year.
Quarterly.
Quarterly, yeah, I think
Okay,
they were
4 a year,
quarterly.
okay.
But it was like herding cats. You know, there was somebody that was representing Boston. They sucked the air out of the room. There was somebody that was, everybody had a different position. At the time, we were arguing, here's another thing we argued about, Attleboro, Massachusetts. Largest commuter rail station outside of the city of Boston. They weren't in the MBTA district and didn't pay an assessment. But a town of Middleton was paying an assessment and had nothing. That's something that at least they finally heard from the advisory board that everybody should be paying, and that happened in the forward funding of 97 or 98, which didn't really forward fund it, it just kicked the can down the road.
So hopefully we'll get somebody that'll step up and.
So again, an announcement for an available seat on the MBTA Advisory Board representing the town of Middleton. Please contact Town Hall or and go on the website, and if you're interested, and research it further, and volunteer and help out your town.
And each town gets one so the city of Boston gets one, the city has the equal voice to the town
Back in the
of
day, they
Middleton?
did, I don't know if it's still that way, I think it is equal, one vote,
It
one
is
town.
still
That's-
one.
So if we get a.
But it's a pretty big,
It's a big, I mean,
Yeah.
like 70 people.
today there's probably, I mean, it's probably makes the legislature look small and functional.
And we'll be sure to post a full candidates list attached to the agenda.
On both websites. Okay, and moving right along. Next would be the Scholarship Committee. Scholarship Committee has one seat for a 3-year term open, and we have an interested party who's nominated themselves, and that's Irene Kastrenakis, who's actually present here, and come right up, please, yeah, speak. And
So hello.
looking at your resume,
Hello.
you're certainly qualified for the
I'm known in town, is that
the
it?
position. No, you're present.
Kastrodakis, 7 Vera Road, Middleton. And I would like to request your consideration to be appointed to the Scholarship Committee. I've been on the Mass Cultural Council of Friends of the Flint. I've done professional fundraising in previous lives and network forensics for the greater part of my professional career. And I think that I could contribute a valuable, independent, and unbiased voice to the process.
So as a town, we're very lucky that we have funding that has been granted to us. I know some of the students in town over the years that the scholarships that have come through here has made an amazing difference on their ability to actually go to college and other programs. And secondarily, for those that have gotten it, I can tell you the committee has done a great job of weeding through the need and making sure that as much as possible, and not an easy process. I know some of the folks that have served in the committee in the past, and I think you would be a fabulous addition.
Thank you. Well, they're fabulous. Knowing the current membership, I have to applaud each and all of them because they are, committed members to the community and to the committee. So I would be honored if I were appointed as part of that membership.
With much thanks for your interest.
My pleasure.
I will welcome a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve Irene Kastrenakis for appointment to the Scholarship Committee for a term through June 30th, 2027.
I'll second that.
A motion and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I'll abstain.
And one abstention.
That doesn't mean he's
None
opposed.
opposed with Costa
He's not
abstaining.
opposed.
That's unanimously. Irene, thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Have a good meeting.
Irene, thank you.
Is that, are there additional openings on that committee, or that fills the committee?
That fills the
That fills.
Oh, good.
It's only a 4. If I may, at the board's
Yeah,
willingness, could I share with you what we do have left for openings?
pleasantly.
Because there's not a lot, and I'm very excited about that for all of you. But if you would like to do some recruitment out in town, the following positions are open. Sorry, my spreadsheet is loading. The only vacancies we have left at this time are the MBTA Advisory Board designee, which we talked about tonight, an alternate for a 1-year term on the Zoning Board of Appeals, 2 3-year terms on the Cultural Council, 2 alternates for 1-year terms on the Industrial and Commercial Design Review, 1 alternate for a 1-year term on the Planning Board.
Did you say 2 alternates on industrial design?
Yes, 2 alternates on Industrial and Commercial, 1 alternate on the Planning Board, and 1 3-year term on the Recreation Committee. So 4 alternates and 2 on the Cultural Council, 1 on Recreation, and the MBTA Advisory as just discussed. So we're doing awfully well, and we thank our volunteers. But if there's anyone that you're looking to recruit, those are the groups that are looking for folks right now. But really impressive work recruiting people this past 2 years. One of the lowest amounts of vacancies I've ever seen in a community. So nice work, everybody.
Well, and thank you for managing it and getting it in front of us to make sure we do that. Okay, then in somewhat of the same scope, we'll move to number 9, which is a review of an administrative services coordinator position. I guess we're talking in terms of what is previously known as the administrative assistant at 40 South Main Street.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you all may recall, back in late spring, a little over 3 months ago, Deb Mahoney moved down, reduced hours down in the clerk's office, which left a vacancy. at the front end of our office, and a huge thanks to Jackie, by the way, for helping pick up a good chunk of the slack on that end of things. But when we went out for that role and advertised, we received a minimal amount of responses, and we were actually only able to get one individual in for an interview, which was a good enough interview, but I think it was our determination that basically her skill set wasn't a good mesh with where we were at in terms of our organizational need. So there was a memo that was distributed in advance of this meeting highlighting that point, but also highlighting the fact, now that I have a year under my belt here, I have a good understanding of the lay of the land. Jackie, who has been helping cover the front, but also has served in her capacity as an interim, and then also the assistant town administrator. I think between the two of us, we have a good read for what our collective strengths are, and then what we really need out of this position. And so what we're requesting is a shift from the current administrative assistant to the town administrator's office to an administrative services coordinator in the town administrator's office. That would allow us the flexibility to cover what was presently being covered in that role by Deb, but also to add an additional layer of special projects, just something a little bit broader, some HR benefit components and items that I guess hopefully the intent is would free up Assistant Administrator Bresnahan and I to delve deeper into other opportunities that for now we just have limited resources and bandwidth to address. So with that in mind, the most well, not the most important figure, but definitely an important one is the bottom line, what it would cost. We are requesting support from this board to tap into the comp reserve budget in the amount of $5,000 to help supplement for the remainder of this calendar year, fiscal year, fully recognizing that July is already passed. We'll probably be through August by the time we actually get this thing off the ground and get somebody in, hopefully mid to late September.
Before licensing season.
Yes, is the goal.
Preferably.
So, the positions would still have the same amount of hours.
Yep, same amount of
Which is
hours.
how many hours?
18.
19.
Or 19, excuse me. And it would remain in the same grade, but we're looking to put it out at a little bit of the higher end of that grade just to reflect some of the more specialized work that we're adding to the role.
So could I ask, is your feeling of the lack or depth of candidates was the kind of the roles and job description, or how much of that do you think might have been salary/benefits/hours?
Hours, the fact that it's unbenefited, that's always difficult. And then I think when you layer on top of that the current market, it's a little bit of a 1-2 punch for us. So,
and I know this discussion isn't what's going to happen in the future, but, we're making a salary decision that will have an effect for the next fiscal year as well. But once our facilities project is done and we have more departments that are under a single roof now, is there any thought as well of kind of the creation of the administrative assistant position moving to
A full-time,
well, maybe
37
not
and-
full-time, but do you see that there's the future opportunity for this position to support more than just your office now?
I mean, there are other organizational needs that we even highlighted in the budget process last year. To rattle off some easy ones, like rec is a big area that we talked about shoring up, that doesn't really have any staff support. I think that there's enough, I don't want to call them scraps, but small pieces that you couldn't really justify an FTE or even a full part-time, but if you lump that into the scope of this role, that's something that we're kind of taking a look at as well.
If I may.
Yeah.
There are things too that we're just scratching the surface of that we could be spending more time on. We did a training with the staff yesterday that was led by me because our website provider doesn't come out and do training. So I did a 2-hour training yesterday for the staff on the website in Canva, helping people get accustomed to the new website. I'm still learning it. Finance Director Wood is also helping me to learn it because her and I can both pick up software But that's something where, you know, when her and I spend an hour on the website, we're happy to do it because it's for the benefit of communicating with residents, communicating with officials. But they're, you know, we're figuring it out as we go. So having someone who's more dedicated to keeping, like, I have just updated all of the appointments during the course of you sitting here having your discussion tonight. I've been updating the website because I'm trying to keep up with the demand, and there are just things that need to be constantly looked at, and we're only scratching the surface for what our website can do, what our social media communications can do, what our other citizen engagement work could be. This is a role that could be a great area. It's the type of role that I started out in my first job, and it's a role that can enable us to do more strategic things, help someone learn the business, help someone learn the functions of an administration office, learn the core things that, like licensing and appointments and are the Mansfield Fund, that you need to do and you have to be able to cover in our jobs, because we often say it to the staff, we say it to each other, we're never too big to answer the phone in our office, we're never too big to go and get paper and fill the copy machine, but the person in our office helps train people to do things like that, helps order things for the building, helps just kind of keep that building humming.
So why aren't we talking about a full-time position?
I think a mix of reasons among them, and I'm sure Jackie would agree, is that it's, for people in our profession, it's not untypical for us to not ask for help when we need it. We just kind of take it on. So we'd gladly take the help, but also fully recognizing that we have several other departments that we would put ahead of us that have that need.
You know, I appreciate that, but I also think this is more than just you and Jackie. So you just talking about the training and the website and so forth. Like, one of the questions I'd ask is, so a portion of this role is going to be around communication support, website, social media. I think all falls into the funding stream that we have through the PEG fund. Is that, I don't want to sound like a former town administrator, which let's use that fund for everything, but I think this is a perfect example of a funding stream that aligns to this position. Not fully, but I think I've just watched our presence in social media and communications. I mean, just this project and having a dedicated web page that's happening there. Now, this project will end at some point, and that'll be archived, and it'll be cool to watch too, but folks in town are gonna like the level of communication that's happened by that. And that's gonna move forward. At some point, we may have a Twitter, X page, whatever it's called, that we're gonna be doing communication. And I think this is a perfect role that can manage some more of that. And that's not taking something off your plate or Jackie's plate. It's there's not even a plate for it right now, even if it was on your plate. So
just so we're all clear, though, a portion of this role is already funded by PEG. So when Justin and I both, actually before your time even, part of our time is also funded through PEG. For example, like, I will be bringing a Verizon license recommendation from the Cable Advisory Committee to you at your next meeting. So there are things that we do that work with PEG and the website that get cut out of our salary. But in the last 2 years, we've worked with the Cable Advisory Committee to reduce how much of our salaries come out of PEG, because we want to be sure that that money's investing in the new facility with PEG. This position that we're talking about has the highest percentage of its salary paid by PEG, because processes payroll, processes accounts payable, and does such a significant portion of the website. But I will say it was a pretty strong recommendation of the Cable Advisory Committee, which includes Richard Gregorio, John Erickson, and Paul Paliselli, that we back those salaries out because they weren't truly being used for PEG purposes. So your point's well taken.
No, and I agree. And so this may be left pocket, right pocket, if less is coming out on some of the other roles, but.
And it's reducing how much more, when we go back, if we do need to get that additional debt for the project, that's in one of those funding sources we talked about last year that reduces that ask.
And I think to hammer home the point, the community outreach component and community engagement is something that coming into Middleton, I intended to invest way more time in, and then quickly found there just isn't much time to do it. And I've been trying to make a push on social media over the past couple weeks to get
Yeah,
some things
I've
out
noticed
there.
that, yeah.
Just in reflecting on my first year here and saying, wow, that was kind of a personal goal, and I fell short on that one. But I think that having support in that area as well, and giving the citizens in Middleton kind of a portal into our day-to-day is something that I think makes the work we do a little more meaningful.
There's a couple, I have a question, and a comment. There's gonna be, transitioning to the new building there's gonna be things that need to be done just for you to move, which is another reason maybe this job needs to be more hours, because there's gonna be a lot, that's gonna be very time consuming.
The coordination,
move,
yeah.
the coordination. The next question for Jackie, if this were to cross that line of 21 hours or 20 hours, whatever it is, to make it benefited, what is the additional cost of those benefits? Just not the additional hourly pay, but just the cost when it crosses that threshold.
20,000 minimum with Medicare and everything built in. If
Assuming a family plan and.
Depending on.
no, that's I think it's closer to 25 when we assume.
But some of it we pay, you pay payroll taxes on the 18 hours.
But we factor.
So
But
I'm just
not
talking
in-
the additional.
We don't pay pension though. We don't
Right.
pay into pension. It's just what's called OBRA, which is our version of Social Security, and then so
health
we
insurance,
so when we move up to health insurance, we're adding health insurance, Medicare, pension contribution,
Dental vision.
dental and vision, and so it gets more into the I believe Sarah used 25,000
25.
for all of the positions that we were looking at during the budget process. And I think that's something, again, I would personally rather get a benefits package to one of the positions that we've talked about for the override this year before we have one for our office. That's something we've talked about. It's not self-sacrificing, it's the order of operations. We recognize that at some point our office, at some point you may have a completely standalone HR director and assistant town administrator, because HR is just getting worse and busier. But, so having someone that we can train that wants to do what we do for a living is, I think, the other thing that we're envisioning. And it's maybe that they're in a graduate program in the evening and they want a part-time gig while they do a fellowship and graduate work because they want to do what we do. And maybe we don't have them forever, but we have them for now. And we can train somebody, build the good habits, and then maybe they're still here when we, down the road a few years, want to talk about going and increasing the FTE. But I think that's how a lot of people are coming up in our business now, people that want to enter the industry. And so to me, like there is a recruitment area to this as well, of where we think we can see people in the market that might be of interest. It hasn't been a traditional secretarial role in that office for a really long time.
For a very,
And I think
very
we
long time.
use, like the way we both work, we use that function even less. Like that position, like one of the titles we talked about was licensing coordinator, though it doesn't encapsulate all of the things that position could do. We need somebody who's the licensing face for the office. So,
And this will remain, even though it's no longer called a confidential administrative assistant, this will still remain as a confidential position.
and that's important because
It is written in there.
it is in the job description,
Yes.
and ideally, I can't sit on every interview panel, nor could Justin. It's just, there's not enough of us. But having a third person who's being trained, going to the HR seminars, who can, support departments through onboarding processes is really critical. I want to give a lot of credit to our treasurer collector and assistant treasurer collector. They've taken on some of the onboarding process as well, but there's a lot of recruitment. You've all seen this. I mean, the amount of turnover we've seen in the short time that Justin and I have both been here, that is not going away. That the nature of people not staying for a long time in any job has dramatically shifted in the last 5 to 10 years. So having more capacity for recruitment and HR, I don't think is going to be something it's not going away.
So, but I just want to call out
Seeing the
that,
big wave of change, sorry, Brian. I'm not seeing as much of a big wave of turnovers in municipal government as we did back a couple of years ago. When those waves come and go, I mean, I'm in it 30 years. I can tell you this isn't the first rodeo. We're at a plateau right now. And you know what? The wave will come again. But if I had to look at this and read the description, I think your hours are the issue in
Yeah.
getting somebody in
Yeah,
there.
I think it's the hours
The
too.
hours are a
And the
problem.
point I was gonna make on this is, Debbie did a great job. If there was a positive comment that I heard more so in the last however much time she was there was, I always say that the town clerk is the front door of government. That's where a lot of people go to. But truly, that position is the front door of people that are coming in to access, whether it's licenses or other items, in the front door for employees. And I think that's important. Secondly, as it comes to recruitment and retention, I think it's the hours, more so than the
Yes.
dollar.
I agree.
And, you know, I don't want to discount the dollar, but we're lucky that Debbie left when she did and didn't leave in mid-October when we are like up to our eyebrows in license renewal. And while there's turnover happening and your hope is maybe we get the person that's going to grad school at night and we'll do this for a little bit, I think this position is really critical for continuity. Because it's the front door of so many, like the gentleman that was here this evening for his common vic license. I mean, we charge a fee for these, and we've updated our fees, and we've really put our thumb down on the requirements of these. In this individual, it was Debbie before, and now whomever will be in the future, this is part of their role. They're the gatekeeper of this, and when that position's vacant, that falls on you guys. There's nobody else to fall on. And quite honestly, I don't want my town administrator or my assistant town administrator spending their time on license renewals. I really don't. I mean, that's just two other items that you guys can't manage on your plate that is already full already. So I'm not opposed to the $5,000 increase. I'm not opposed to the direction you're taking the position. I think it makes sense. I think it also updates correctly, but don't be afraid during our budget process next year. Don't view this as, well, the prevailing wind is, we don't really want somebody, we don't want to be advocating for ourselves, we want to be advocating for other departments. I would argue this position is as supportive for other departments as it is for you. So don't discount that. Now, don't come in with two full-time positions and think we're going to roll over that easy, but
But Brian,
I think this is an hourly amount issue.
Does it make sense to, in my opinion, to start this, advertise the new description at a 25-hour position? Financially, can we do that?
I mean, that we'd want to run the numbers with Sarah, but the money's there in comp reserve.
I
We're
can't
currently-
imagine
you get
it
into the
wouldn't.
benefits,
For
right?
the
That
hourly rate.
$25,000 in benefits you talked, that's why I asked that question.
I
Right.
think the benefits is the one I would want to check with Sarah about. I don't know if we can eat that. It depends on,
Well,
we've
start
just gone
date,
through
too.
open enrollment, so
Yeah.
we can look at the insurance budget.
25 hours doesn't make sense in that
That's true, too.
it adds the $25,000 worth of cost. If you're going to go over 20,
Go to 40.
Yep,
you know,
Yeah.
or 32 or 35,
Yes.
don't go to 25.
I agree.
So I guess
Not
my
opposed.
thought there is if we need
I
to
assume
hire-
your hope is to have, in the future, at least maybe our hope is, there's somebody there 5 days a week. It may not be 8 hours 5 days a week, but 5 days a week.
I mean, we'd love to have it, and as Jackie mentioned, like, we're not above picking up the phone. Like, there are plenty of times people call and they get me, and they're shocked sometimes that we bother picking up the phone. But I think Jackie and I are big believers in that kind of,
Which is perfectly fine, except for this position
Right.
warrants. It warrants more
You're the
hours.
CEO and she's the COO of a multi-million-dollar organization.
yeah.
And quite honestly, like, this isn't your confidential secretary keeping your schedule and transferring calls into you. This is a administrative services director type position that is actually taking the leadership from you two and actually implementing, whether it's operating the licensing process or to, I think it was Jeff, maybe it was Debbie that brought up of, when we start moving of all of our buildings to the new buildings, someone's going to be
Coordination.
coordinating that. Now, hopefully at that point, we actually do have, look at me advocating for this, a facilities director, but
Paul, make sure you get that recording on like 5 DVDs.
7:51.
I'm gonna take
But,
it
but the
home.
reality is of that, there's, and when all of these departments are now, except for DPW, that will remain where they are, but when all of the other departments are under a single roof, there's gonna be both synergies and expectations that are gonna be, need to be addressed, because people are gonna be using this building more than they're using the current building, people will be coming in for services, who's gonna coordinate just the utilization of
The
the
moving
function
truck.
rooms? No, the function rooms. Who's going to be coordinating, like, the Boy Scouts want to have a meeting on Tuesday night in the multipurpose room, or
Well, we should really make a decision, because what we don't want to do is hire someone for 18 hours.
Right.
For more
Just
money, and then
start
that
out.
says,
decide
oh, I don't want full-time.
At the budget, right, at the budget season, that it really warrants a full-time position, but we already have this part-time person. So I think we really need to make a decision. I would support this going to a full-time or a 30-some-odd hour a week
I would
position.
also.
I think you named it appropriately, because, there's coordination happening now needed, and then there's the coordination Jeff mentioned to get up to 105, and like Brian mentioned, there's a whole lot of coordination that's gonna go on there. But we're still a couple of years away from moving from one building to the other. Is there time in, I'll leave it to you guys, is there time in, if we approve this, what we're doing is we're basically revamping, replacing the old administrative assistant to the town administrator's office with an administrative services coordinator position. Is there time to take this on as it is and, come up with a final product of your proposal, job description proposal? And then is there time for us to, to look at it and do what we have to do to get it into a full-time position?
So the hard part
Leave it
is
to you.
where it's presently vacant. Like, we want to get somebody in yesterday,
Right.
basically, and so
And you're
that's
not
kinda-
gonna do it at 19 hours.
Right.
It's not gonna happen.
So I'd say, well, firstly, just to express gratitude of the support from the board. I wasn't expecting to have this conversation this evening.
Well, 5,000, it's more than reasonable for what you brought to us tonight, but as the discussion has shown,
Well, the thought is if we're going to hire somebody, but then pivot in a year.
Can that person pivot with it?
Right.
I don't want you to hire somebody that says 19 is what I want, and then we go to the budget process next
Right.
year and say,
Right.
let's
Right.
make this 35 hours benefited, and the person that's in the role says, no, I was hired for 19, I don't want to do.
Yep.
And that has great possibilities.
Yeah, I don't want to
down the
increase
road.
1 hour for a
you
benefit.
want, and
Yeah, I think maybe if we bring something back to the next meeting, if we go back, run the numbers, see what's feasible.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of, increasing, in mid-budget, a position from part-time to something approaching full-time. Doing it as part of, the budget process, great. But doing, putting a little more money, that 5,000 to make it a little bit more attractive, I'm okay with that.
Would you,
I'm not okay with,
Costa, would you be okay with moving the hours a small amount that gives flexibility so they could still hire this at 19 hours if they want? Or if they hire a candidate that may want more hours, I'm trying to give them flexibility to actually open the recruitment in a way that is they're going to get better
the
candidates.
recruitment could be currently 19 hours, and, it will be proposed to be increased to X number of hours in the next fiscal year.
Without the guarantee, it would be hard to find somebody that'd be willing to take, because
Right.
I don't.
Two different,
No.
two different people.
Yeah.
right,
No.
two different
So if
people.
this position had become vacant before we went to our budget, and you were having this conversation
then that you're having right now, what would have you recommended? And I mean, the conversation we're having right now where the board's saying, we think this is more than a 19-hour for recruitment. I mean, we're not gonna find another Debbie that wants to come in for 19 hours, possibly. I mean, you've proven that.
And be that effective.
So if we had had this conversation around March and I received this feedback, I would have brought you back a proposal for this fiscal year for a 35-hour benefited employee, based on this feedback.
And some of that would have been on the override, which would have,
Which would have been,
So this is one of those instances that where your need doesn't necessarily line up with your calendar. It's, it's imperfect.
And I wouldn't want to hire a temp either, because that's not
No,
going to get
no,
you
no,
anybody.
no.
No, you
We
get what you
got
pay,
more
you
compliments
get what you
from
pay for with
the
it.
people that have been in that position, from out-of-town attorneys that apply. We want to keep it that way. We want a professional in that. We got a 5-star rating, we want to keep it.
yeah.
We need the State Department to train all of our employees, is really what it is.
If you said to go to full-time or 35 hours next fiscal year.
But you can't.
Well, we could put
It is
it,
Yeah, but the
today.
position is empty now.
The
What do
need
you do
is
till then?
today.
no. I'm saying advertise it. So if somebody ultimately wants 35, but they can get their foot in the door now for 19, maybe they take it. I don't
That's
know.
gonna be very
Yeah,
hard.
that,
limiting your
it'll
pool.
never
Well, I
work.
mean, I think the only way you kind
Never
of
work.
have less than a limit is if this board is willing to go on record now stating that our plan in the next fiscal year budget is to present in the prelim budget a 35-hour
No.
position.
well, if you thought you were gonna increase, become more attractive with what you brought tonight, then I don't see how it doesn't become at least as attractive as Costa just mentioned, now that I think of it. I mean, you have a need now. I mean, this.
I don't think 5,000 is gonna make the difference
No.
that you need. That's my
not.
opinion, I may be wrong. I think
only
it's,
100 a week.
I think it's
It-
hours. I think it's
the
hours.
It's the hours. The 5,000 is just
You're
little
capping
more, but
into a different tier, I guess. And
Yes.
if it's
Yes.
the intent of the board within the next fiscal year to kind of go all in on it, then you're gonna want to gear your candidate search based on that all in.
exactly.
In the building, are there any non-full-time positions? Or everybody except that position is full-time?
No, there's another.
There's
non-full-time.
a few, or a couple.
So there's, in our building, there's 2 people that are not 40 hours full-time, one of whom is 32 hours and one of whom is 18 or 19. All of the other 18 or 19-hour positions are in the clerical union, and then we have 2 positions that are from before my time that are 24 hours and benefited, one at the COA and one at the police department, which that's from the before times, not something I've ever made a recommendation. I think we've talked about it at length, like,
Right.
you go to a benefits package, you're going for I want
Right.
the value of a full-time
Exactly.
employee.
We
if I'm
talked
paying
about
for it.
that,
Yeah, that's, I mean, that's always been this board's direction.
Yeah.
I mean, our old days was, instead of having a full-time, we hired 2 18-hour positions.
We did it really
That was
well,
the old
too.
model, and that doesn't work anymore.
It doesn't work anymore.
doesn't work
I mean, just living in municipal government and in looking what's on the MMA website.
We are
I mean,
competing in this role
these
with the
19
private
hours.
sector and other roles. It's not the years of, I go to work for the government because it's a state, it's a steady benefited pension program. When it's not, we're now competing against the private sector that there's probably, if you look at postings similar to this in the private sector, there's probably not a lot of 19-hour positions like this. So you're looking for a needle in the haystack. So, but Costa, your point's not lost on me either.
No.
But I think we are, this is chicken and egg right now. This is,
My
you think the
opinion,
5,000 is gonna make the difference to find the right candidate?
I think it would be the right candidate for what we came in with and described, but I'd be hesitant to hire somebody of that, within that pool of that caliber, if the intention is to grow. You're really narrowing, your pool.
Is it still advertised right now?
No.
Oh, we rescinded it.
Yeah, so you're right. So if you
So-
post it as a 19-hour now, non-benefited, and a year from now, it's benefited in 35 hours, and you had reposted it again, you're going to get a much different pool of candidates.
So why wouldn't we just go where we want to be in 11 months from now? We're effectively talking 11 months. Why, and the need is going to be perpetuated up to those 11 months as we're getting deeper into different parts of the government's process. My opinion.
If this moved to 35
This 19
hours, are
hours
there-
is, you're not gonna get any
If this moved to
pool of-
35 hours, are there other duties that you would put in the mix on this? That, like, I'm not holding you to it, but just give me some examples of where you think additional roles may come into this.
From the budget process
Outside
in the
of-
book that we were looking at, other things that we were looking at funding last year.
I mean, I
So
think,
Budgetary items.
There's
the
things-
GFOA.
no, I think that's a conversation with Sarah before we, I mean,
Well, like, she
that's-
might like support on that.
Yes, I mean, support on the general citizen engagement, like when I interviewed with this board, and it was before your time, but we talked about it, and it was before Debbie's time, I had done a citizens academy in my last community, and that was a big selling point, and we thought there was gonna be more time. HR's been more complicated, the unions have gotten more complicated, so like citizen engagement, citizen academy, I think there's things, missed opportunities with procurement. I mean, I've been sitting on it, you've been sitting on it for a year, we've got tons of surplus stuff to get onto municipal. That's just stuff that like, that's not on fire, so it doesn't
Right.
happen as quickly.
Tends to just sit, yeah.
The complexity of the projects that we've got going on with the buildings, whether it's buildings that we're trying to keep up, buildings that we're trying to build, or buildings that we're trying to dispose of.
Well, you lost Brad as far as helping you when something breaks in your building. This
We
time.
have thankfully recruited Paul Goodwin
Oh, okay.
to now be doing that role.
Oh, Paul must be so happy.
He is.
Temporarily.
Oh, he was voluntold?
What's that?
No,
He was
he volunteered.
Yeah, voluntold, yeah.
Right, what was the budgeted amount for that position?
For facilities,
No.
for Deb's position. Give me 1 second.
At the 19 hours, you mean?
Yeah, what, in the current.
What it was advertised for, what
Current.
we were expected to pay, right?
Yep.
Without the 5,000 extra.
Yeah,
So it was just shy of $26 an hour.
Costa, I expected a number by now.
Right now, it's about 25,700.
25,688.
so, you're, basically, it'll, if it's the same hourly rate at 35, it's going to about 50, and then 25 for benefits goes to 75. You're adding about $50,000 worth of cost. We shouldn't have that much lying around.
And we don't.
I think that's where we were looking at going to roughly 30,000. So the position would go from, it was like 2586 to basically 31, which is the higher end of the grade A.
So, although people, you might, let's do this now. The other thing is, we may not have the money to do it right now.
And so I think it's, where we're at tonight anyway, is I don't think we're gonna be able to come to a determination, but we've got plenty of feedback and things to think about. So if we can go back, maybe, envision and get on paper what a 35-hour would look like, what those added duties would be, and then have a more concrete financial picture of what our limitations actually are. I think there might be value in doing that.
Maybe
rather than-
looping in FinCom at some point.
Yep, looping in FinCom rather than just kind of doing that one from the hip in a silo.
So maybe you want to put the original ad back up between now and the next meeting, and then and we could talk about it at the next meeting. Between now and then, maybe someone will answer the original ad and show up.
Well, I think if we're not gonna move forward, and there's a decision made after you come back with dollars of, there's just not room to do this, or it's not the right time because of the comp reserve account. I don't think anybody's opposed to the 5,000. I just don't think it's gonna be your magic pill.
No.
No.
To bring in new candidates. So I think at a minimum, I think I'm hearing unanimity among the board that the 5,000 is not an issue for us.
Correct.
Plan a posting for that.
Can I say one thing
Yeah.
about that, though? Does that raise the bar too high for the more hour? Well, so you have to pay at least, when you go to 35 hours, that's the starting point per hour for that.
So you're saying that if we went to 35 hours, what does that come out to in an hourly rate?
I mean, I think if we go to 35 hours, we're also having a conversation about whether this belongs in grade B instead of grade A. So I think to me, once you change the hours, you're changing, and you're adding more things, we have to have a conversation of if that position is still appropriately graded in grade A. The top of grade A overlaps with the bottom of grade B. Truthfully, a full-time job at $50,000 is also not gonna get us like, that's just a more expensive version of the problem we're already facing.
And does confidentiality in the position affect you being able to take it out of A?
No, A is
they're all
just the
non-union.
union
Okay.
They're all
the
non-union.
non-union compensation schedule.
I'm
And
just
I
thinking of the
think
employees we
this
have
is only
that
gonna
have
get
it and where they
more
are.
confidential if it
Yeah.
were to go up a grade, because there's more HR things or
Right.
procurement things. I mean,
I would
Workers' comp.
offer, though, if you're adding benefits, you could walk back the hourly a little.
It's hard.
It's
hard,
If someone applying for a
Because
job, if someone was
benefits-
18 hours getting $30 an hour, and
Right.
you want to start them at 20, I'm afraid we're going to raise, if we truly want to go to a 35 hour or so.
Well, the 5,000, we're not saying you're gonna pay at the 5,000, it's gonna be a range.
it's the max of the range.
Yeah, so we're basically saying, here's 5,000 to move the range up to, what did you say, $25 an hour?
Going
what it is
from
now.
25 and change to
To
about
31.
30.
So this says the range would be up to, that doesn't mean that's what it's gonna be. So,
The candidate will get.
Depending on who.
I don't know, this, we may be proven wrong, you may add to this, repost it, and you find the next Debbie.
Yeah.
I would also add that if it does end up you deciding just to add the 5,000 and repost it, that instead of waiting until August 13th, although that's only 2 weeks away,
No, it's not far. And you're,
that's
Away
only
next
2
week
weeks
anyway.
away.
it's not that far.
But,
I was
yeah.
trying to think of a way to expedite, just so they can get somebody in there and train, because training takes so long to just get done.
Yep.
And to train your way in your office, it's the worst.
And I do want to say thank you. There have been people in our building that have stepped up with a number of those things, whether it's training new people or helping us through the transition. Sharon alone has processed a number of AP warrants for me, so I don't have to do the munis part, which has been generous, but the training's going to be a lot. And I think, the first licensing season someone goes through,
Be a little bumpy.
it's going to be bumpier than we've had. Last year was a really nice gift, but it'll be a little bumpier this year for
But
sure.
it's basically gonna be you there with her, so we're paying two people, or town's paying
And I
two
think,
people
I
to
think
get
Deb would
one
be
job.
willing to help
Yeah.
when she's available. She can't promise things because she's got a busy year in her department herself, but I'm certain she would give a hand.
She's right downstairs, so.
Yeah.
Right. I don't
All
know.
right, well, we'll get something together then and bring some options back for the 14th, and,
Are you gonna do anything in the interim? Is anything gonna be at either a higher rate or the original rate, or not?
I mean, I feel like if we bump up the range with the 5, if you're all agreeable for the 5 for now, I don't see any harm in putting it out and seeing what, if anything, comes back over that time period. And
All right.
that might help inform a decision on the 14th.
13.
Need a vote?
13th.
We need to
13th.
vote for that, for anything, for the for the,
Yeah,
well,
if
for the,
the range change for the extra
You're
5,000.
not, but there's no concern by anyone if that we're raising the bar too high for when we want to go to the more hours?
yeah, what do you do
Well,
when we
we-
need something more? What do we do with this person?
We also have to make a vote to move this position on the chart.
If
This one stays, right?
the current proposal is to keep it within grade A.
It does stay within.
Yeah.
This is a
okay.
grade A change. We're just asking for money from comp reserve so that we can push it to the higher end of the grade. And this is kind of the first time we've done this since we have adopted the schedule, so it felt important to kind of talk through that with all of you and get your
The
approval.
advertised rate would be that $5,000 higher
As a top range.
as a top rate, does, you know, and, you know, if you don't get anybody, that tells us one thing. If you get somebody that's not worth, is worth this lower range, but you wouldn't pay them the higher range, that tells us something. So I don't see any downside in putting out the advertisement with up to this amount.
So the up to would be what, per hour?
$31.
It's like 31 and a
And
couple
change.
cents, yeah.
And what would you envision if we were to, next year, go to a 35-hour a week job? What would you envision the pay for that to be?
I think it depends, I think that depends on what roles are put into.
Depends on.
Yeah, we'd have to get some.
What we're talking about now? We all have a.
I would say it depends on how much more complicated the role gets. Right now, I would say this role is at the top of A. The top of A and the bottom of B overlap, and that's where we would go through the Collins, we'd take the new job description, and we'd apply it to the Collins Center weighting schedule that they have given us, and we'd re-weight it and see if it belongs in B or A, and then we'd give you a budgetary amount for a hiring range, because you also have to factor in that the position, we would be budgeting the existing position for COLA, for potential merit pay, so all those things have added to that pool as well. So we don't want to budget for it in 26 based on 25 realities, when that would immediately make it lose pace with the people in its peer group. But I think a full-time position to me has a very different complexity level. It's still covering licensing, it's still the core admin function, but I think with more time, there's a lot more someone could do. We don't have a grad fellow this fall. There's things that we've relied on grad fellows for this position, like with research and budget. And, we've basically used our grad fellows as a budget analyst for, putting together these very proposals that we're talking through tonight. There's a lot. I mean, you could do a lot with these types of positions. I mean, I had a special projects title at one point. That's a common one that you see in MMA right now. I was one of the first people that had it, and other projects as assigned really stretched in that job by the time I left.
And I think that's just the nature of the work we do, is there's always going to be those catch-all items that you got to put them somewhere. And so, I guess to wrap this up, we'll go back, we'll put something together. Once again, I just want to stress as a reminder, going into the budget season, there is at minimum a few other organizational priorities that I would consider to be dire needs. Chief among them, our fire department and our police department are stretched extraordinarily thin.
But I want to be clear, again, that those funding scenarios are going to again be contingent upon an override. There's not, and I'm not saying that this wouldn't be either, but it's not like, well, without an override, we're going to give you a quarter of a police officer or 33% of a firefighter.
This isn't sacrificing that, but I just want to keep it in
No.
the front of people's minds. It's very much an issue.
Well, and I think that needs to remain that way, because when overrides fail, the need doesn't fail with it. But when the needs do fail with it, and we come back and say, well, it's really not a need, then that override should have failed.
Right.
So,
No, your point's taken. I mean, those requests were needs, not wants, and, so, I think we all were aware of what we had in store
and
for
this
us.
may be a need as well. This is not, I don't think this is a want, my opinion.
All right, so
I
then-
agree 100%.
Okay, can I ask for a motion to modify the administrative assistant to the TA's
Mr.
office?
Chairman, I move that we Pursuant to the discussion this evening, move the confidential administrative assistant position to the term
Admin service coordinator.
administrative services manager or coordinator?
Coordinator.
Coordinator, and also provide a up to $5,000 annual increase in the range while keeping within the same classification schedule as part of our non-union positions.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. No more discussion. We'll take a vote with all those in favor.
Aye.
All opposed? None.
So
Passed
that will go out
unanimously.
immediately?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
Thank you.
She probably just pressed sent on it right now.
Honestly, I considered it once someone brought that up, but I was like, we'll wait till the morning.
Little problem turned into a bigger problem. That's a way of doing that. All right, so that's pretty much it. Updates and announcements. I wanted to, I know I noticed it, and perhaps others have, the website change, and it's both its appearance and the layout. I mentioned the other day when we were doing the ice cream trail. Looks great, looks outstanding. I mean, you know, it's, I think the word was serene, was that the word?
Yeah, you used a really calming word.
Did I use it? Oh, I'm sorry if I lessened it, but that's
No,
because
it's
I
all
was
right.
blown away. It's because the impact was incredible. No, seriously, if you haven't seen it already, go take a look and you'll see what I mean in the appearance alone. So, that was, I just want to make mention of that and make open thanks for that, Jackie. Thank you very much.
Thank you to Deb Mahoney in our office. She was definitely a part of the design. And Billy Walsh, our grad fellow from Merrimack, who we saw leave early in April to take a full-time role in the town manager's office in Natick. So we're quite proud of Billy for moving up in the world.
Merrimack students doing well again.
Anyone else have any?
Yeah, recently they've put up, the pedestrian crossing signs, in the
Oh, in the
road.
roadway, yeah.
And so, please try not to hit them. You know, the
A couple of them
one,
are a little tight.
So
the
are
one
our
that,
roads.
Essex Street where the rail trail begins. You know, it was down the first morning, it was up. It was down the next morning, it was up. The third morning, somebody had thrown it off to the side of the road. So try not to hit them, please.
Good Lord.
We need road spikes. Sense the excess speed and they just go off. And that'll end that. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, just on the upcoming meeting component, on August 13th, there is a conflict with the Library Board of Trustees, and I was wondering if the board would be willing to accommodate a one-time shift to 4 PM on that date to try to allow enough time.
I can do that.
It's fine with me.
You already
available.
changed it to 5, didn't
As long as it's well publicized, more than just an agenda going out, on social media, as long as it's very well publicized.
time change, yeah.
I'm fine with
So that
that.
would be 6 to 4 on the 13th.
From
No,
6 to 4.
starting
yeah.
at
4 to 6.
He's saying moving it from 6
Moving
PM
it
to
from
4
Oh, 6 to,
PM.
yes, yeah,
Okay.
yes, yeah.
And he's also saying we need to be done by 6.
Oh, yeah.
So you're doing it.
Yeah.
All right, there's nothing else?
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
second.
So moved.